Hello, everyone. Whew, I love America so much. I love you guys. I should have said this in the end of my speech, but I just say it because I feel it right now. I love you so much, and thank you. So thank you, Ryan Helfenbein, for having me on this stage. This is such an honor. As you saw, a month and a half ago, I had thousands of Korean youth in Korea with Charlie. And I had an honor to invite him to Korea. And now I'm in front of you all here, all American young generation, future generation of America. And this is my honor. Thank you. To introduce myself a little bit, my name is Mina Kim. I'm the founder and president of Bildup-Korea. It's a grassroots youth movement connecting Korea and America to defend freedom and faith among the next generation. Let me tell you a little bit of my story, and then my story with Charlie in his last days. So in 2020, when the world shut down and fear filled every screen, I began speaking through a small podcast in my room, and just to tell the truth about what's really happening in America during COVID, because media was telling all the lies. And somewhere in that moment, I swallowed what many call the red pill, and my eyes were open to the world I could never unsee. And for the first time, I saw how truth was being silenced, and how faith was being mocked, and how freedom, once I took for granted, was slipping away. And I didn't just see the darkness, but I felt that God is calling me to stand against it. And not long after that, I had a chance to attend America Fest, which is one of Turning Point USA's events in America. And in that conference room, something in me came alive. It wasn't just another conference, but it was as if God's confirming me the burden He had placed in my heart for a long time. And that became the second turning point of my life. And of course, the first turning point of my life was me meeting Jesus in person, personally. And through Charlie's boldness and conviction, I understood that God hadn't sent me to America by coincidence, nor placed me in Korea by accident. He had written both nations into my story for a reason. And that moment gave birth to my mission to stand between America and Korea and Asia to awaken a generation that loves God, pursues truth, and defends freedom. And that revelation became the heartbeat of Bildup-Korea that you just saw. And let me tell you a fun story. Whenever I watched Charlie's videos several years ago, especially when he spoke with pastors about the role of the church in America, I used to think, I was getting very jealous. And I used to think that, oh, I wish I had a mentor or pastor like that in Korea so I can speak out. And God heard that small prayer, and in His grace, He gave me two spiritual fathers, one in Korea and one here in America. And that American spiritual father is Pastor Rob McCoy, the very man I'd seen in Charlie's videos, and he's Charlie's pastor and mentor as well. And when God gave me that vision to bring this movement, freedom movement to Korea, I went to Pastor Rob's church out of the blue and walked into his office and said, Pastor Rob, I came from Korea. You don't know me, but you got to help me. And I want to bring this freedom movement to Korea, and we need this so badly right now. And he looked at me, a complete stranger, and he said, okay, all right. And I thought he was joking, but that simple word became a miracle. And the next day, I didn't know, but Charlie spoke at that same church for a seminar. And for the first time in front of Charlie and Pastor Ram McCoy, I shared my vision publicly that the seed of Bildup-Korea was planted. It's a Turning Point USA, but the Korean version. And less than a year later, that freedom movement began. That began in America, took place also in Korea. You know, throughout the scripture, you see how God leads people to victory in many different ways, in strange ways. David facing Goliath, Joshua circling Jericho, and Gideon's 300 against thousands. And God's strength, strangely, shines brightest in impossible battles. And my journey was one of those. It's very similar. When God called me to build this movement, I had just returned to Korea after studying in the United States for a long time. I had no connection in Korea. I didn't know any church. I had no organization, but only a vision from God. And it was incredibly lonely trying to gather people for something that didn't yet exist. The freedom movement back in Korea 4 years ago was unknown. And at the same time, my father, my physical father, was paralyzed in an accident and became quadriplegic and fell into a coma. And he still is in that status. And our family started to struggle financially. And there were nights I didn't know how to cover my own living expenses. And still, God told me not to give up. And instead of telling me to survive for my own family or for my own self, God told me to build. And I obeyed. And one step at a time, trusting that every small yes would lead to a next miracle. And my Korean spiritual father once told me, I think this will help you too. Sometimes you know your calling from the beginning, but most of the time you realize it as you walk. Because every act of obedience reveals that calling more clearly. And he was right. Every small step of faith, every prayer meeting, every gathering, and every challenge that I faced became another confirmation that this was God's calling for Korea, for America, and for my life. And through Build Up Korea, since its founding in 2023, thousands of young Koreans gathered, like you all here, to worship, to pray, and to stand for truth. And they didn't just attend the conference, but they met God, and they were awakened. And they fell in love with their nation again, and they fell in love with America. But God didn't stop there. Through Build Up Korea, a new God-centered business entered Korea. It's called Every Life. If you go to the women's bathroom outside of this conference hall, you'll see Every Life's products. It's a pro-life family brand from America, founded to defend life and family values. And today, in the nation with the lowest birth rate in the world, which is Korea, the messages, make more babies and be fruitful and multiply, are being proclaimed again. And they're starting to have more babies. You may not know this, but Korea is America's legacy. I can confidently call that. 150 years ago, American missionaries stepped on a broken land. They built schools, hospitals, and churches. And one of those schools built by an American missionary called Henry Appenzeller, there was a young student who studied the principles of American liberty and democracy. And that young man later became the first president of South Korea. And he was specifically inspired by the Declaration of Independence of the United States of America. And while imprisoned for opposing the monarchy, he read the Bible, he met God in prison, and dreamed of building a nation modeled after America, a nation built on biblical truth and prayer. And of course, some tries to twist our foundation and call him a dictator. It's the same playbook. And yes, he was not perfect, but he was faithful. And because of that faith, and because of his love for America and American values, Korea rose from the ashes and became one of the top 10 economies in the world. And most importantly, second largest missionary sending nation on earth after the United States of America. Isn't that amazing? You know, this is not human achievement, it's God's grace. And it all began with the faith of Americans. Today, Korea stands in a crossroads. Freedom to worship is being challenged, and many churches have grown silent. You know, Jesus gave his life for us, yet when his name is mocked, too many people step back in fear. And I had to repent because I once was like that too. But watching America gave me so much hope. Seeing young believers like you pray and speak truth reminded me that revival always begins with courage. And after 2 years of prayer, last September, Charlie Kirk came to Seoul, and Ryan Helfenbein stood with us as a true ally of faith in that very conference room in Seoul, Korea. This was 5 days before Charlie passed away. For 2 years, I had invited him, but he rarely traveled overseas, and then suddenly he came. And when he arrived, I'll tell you a funny story. He canceled most of the meetings my team and I had arranged cautiously. And honestly, I was really, really frustrated and angry. But then he told me, Mina, there are 2 places I must visit in Korea. The DMZ, where I can see North Korea, and the statue of General MacArthur. And now I understand why he did that. Before going home to heaven, it was as if before leaving this world, Charlie had to see the land where freedom does not yet exist. And he had to stand before the statue of the man who helped bring freedom to the land I call home. And he had to pray over both, the place still bound in darkness and the place that was once rescued by faith and courage of Americans. And I believe God allowed him to do this so that we would understand something profound, that Korea and Asia are not just mission fields, but we are spiritual friends of yours, called to run alongside America in these last days. And Charlie's final journey was not an ending, it was a passing of the torch from America's fight for freedom to Asia's and Korea's awakening. When we become a grain of wheat, willing to die to ourselves and be planted by God, our tears become seeds of revival. And you know that. And when I look back, I realize every step, every loneliness, and every tear, and every fear was God's training ground for faith. And there were days I've wondered I had made a mistake bringing and starting this never before heard or seen movement in Korea. But every time I wanted to quit, God whispered, this is not the end, and this is where he begins. And he did. He turned the weakness into his story, and he turned the impossibility into a testimony. And he used a man named Charlie Kirk, a brother, a mentor, and a fighter of faith, to remind us that truth and freedom are not ideas, but sacred assignments from God. I believe Charlie's final journey was God's message to us, that America and Korea and the world, we must run together. And friends, this generation is not forgotten. God is not done with America. God is not done with Korea. He is not done with you. And then the same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead is alive in you. And then the same fire that fell in the upper room is about to move again, but he's waiting for our hearts to say, here I am, Lord, send me. That's right. So, Liberty, thank you for being the generation that loves Jesus more than life itself, and the generation that would die for him because he first died for us. And you're not just students of a Liberty University, you are ambassadors of revival and leaders who will carry the fire of freedom and faith to the ends of the earth. And if America leads the way, Korea will stand beside you, and we will run this spiritual race together until victory. Would you all want that? Yes. So let me close with this. May you be that spark, and may you carry the flame of revival and awakening from these hills of Virginia, beautiful place, to the nations, until every knee bows to the name above all names, Jesus Christ. And may God bless you. God bless America. I love you, America, so much. And may his kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Thank you so much. Is it okay if I ask you to do one more thing before I go back to Korea? So we have a catchphrase, strong Korea makes great America. Do you all agree with this? Could we all do a little bit of selfie video, a quick selfie video saying, strong Korea makes great America. Is that okay? Thank you so much. And this will encourage so many Koreans that are in danger right now. Okay. Oh, oops, sorry. I got a little nervous. Okay, you guys ready? 1, 2, 3. Strong Korea makes America. Woo! Thank you.